Is this the moment Venezuela has been waiting for? The world is gradually throwing its support behind Juan Guaidó.
Welcome to Plain English, the podcast that goes at the right speed for English language learners. Listen now and read the transcript online at plainenglish.com. Now, here's Jeff, your host for today's episode.
The leader of Venezuela's National Assembly, Juan Guaidó, declared himself the legitimate president in the strongest challenge yet to the authority of strongman Nicolas Maduro. Maduro won what is widely considered to be a fraudulent election last year and recently began his second term. The U.S., Canada, and other large countries in the Americas have lent their support to Guaidó, and an alliance of European countries is pressuring Maduro to call a fair election. Will this be the end of Maduro's disastrous presidency? Welcome back to Plain English. I'm Jeff. Like always, JR is the producer. Today is episode 125, so you can follow along on the transcript at plainenglish.com/125. Our email addresses, if you want to get in touch with us, are Jeff, Jeff, at plainenglish.com and JR at plainenglish.com. And today, I want to let you know about a new way to interact with us, and that is by WhatsApp. You know, several thousand of your fellow listeners are on the email list at plainenglish.com/mail, by the way. And all of you on that list, you get the episode emails with a summary of the main topic and the links to outside articles and all that. But sometimes I just want to send out a quick note to some listeners and ask a question about a future topic, something more informal. And I don't want to send out those notes to the email list since that's not what people sign up to the emails for. But at the same time, I know a lot of you enjoy interacting with JR and me, sending us notes, and being in touch with us in a more intimate way. So that's a long way of saying that I looked into getting a WhatsApp number for the show, and I'm happy to announce it today. It is an American number, so you need the +1 at the beginning. And here it is, +1 312 967 8757. I got to pick the number from a long list, so I got one starting with 312, which is for Chicago. And I think the rest of the numbers are easy to remember. They're fun to say, which is important. 967 8757. So here it is once more, +1 312 967 8757. Send me a WhatsApp, say hi, tell me your name, and I'll write back. Maybe not immediately, but I will write back. And when I have questions for the audience, if I want to get your feedback on something or hear people's opinions about an upcoming topic, I'll send out a note to the WhatsApp list and you can write me back. This is all an experiment, so we'll see how it goes. Once more, +1 312 967 8757. Two parallel governments are vying for legitimacy in Venezuela. On one side, Nicolas Maduro. He has been the president since 2013 and won a second term last year in a so-called election, which was widely seen as a sham. On the other side, Juan Guaidó, a legislator who has recently emerged as the leader of the opposition. Guaidó declared himself the true president of Venezuela last week, saying the government's sham election was not legitimate. Guaidó is the leader of the National Assembly, which is Venezuela's legislature. Venezuela has been in a deep economic crisis since 2014. The country suffers from shortages of basic goods and services, including food and medicine. Inflation is in the thousands of percentage points a year, effectively wiping out the value of any money that has been saved. People are in a desperate race to get money and spend it immediately on the food and supplies they need to survive. It's not an exaggeration to say people are starving, unable to feed themselves or their families. Crime is rife, and a sense of desperation has set in among the population. Millions of desperate Venezuelans have fled the country, flooding neighbors like Brazil, Ecuador, and Colombia with refugees. The government has put restrictions on passports and visas, trapping many millions more who want to leave. Other countries, including the United States, have tried to send food and medicine to help people in Venezuela, but Maduro's government has refused most outside support. The country held an election last year, but it was widely considered to be a fraud. Maduro engineered his own victory by barring opposition politicians from running. He has also filled the Supreme Court with his supporters and invalidated Venezuela's legislature, the National Assembly. The legislature has continued to meet since 2017, even though it has been stripped of power. Until today, the primary opposition figure had been Enrique Capriles, but for various reasons, opposition to Maduro has had a hard time getting any traction. Enter the 35-year-old Guaidó. As the leader of the National Assembly, he is the primary opposition figure to Maduro. He has built up wide support among other members of the Assembly and recently tried to ratchet up the pressure on Maduro. He went before a cheering crowd of tens of thousands of people in Caracas and symbolically took the presidential oath of office, declaring himself the legitimate president. He told the crowd that if they do not keep up the pressure on Maduro and fight for their freedom, then all of their sacrifice would not be worth it. Guaidó proactively contacted the Secretary of State of the United States, Mike Pompeo, and the Vice President, Mike Pence, to ask for support. The U.S. responded by pledging to send basic food and supplies as soon as they can find a way to get them into Venezuela. The U.S. also took the extraordinary step of recognizing Guaidó as the legitimate president of Venezuela, a move that is surprising considering Donald Trump's typical desire to pull out of global alliances and focus on domestic policy. Other countries, such as Brazil, Argentina, Colombia, and Canada, have joined the United States in recognizing Guaidó as the legitimate president. A statement by the United States said that the National Assembly is the only part of the Venezuelan government that was elected by the people, so it alone has democratic legitimacy. Europe is preparing to recognize Guaidó unless Maduro calls an election. The Prime Minister of Spain gave a televised address saying Maduro has just 8 days to call an election before the European countries recognize Guaidó as the president. China, Russia, Turkey, Bolivia, and Cuba are on the other side. They have publicly supported Maduro's government. Mexico has not taken sides. For the moment, Maduro holds the levers of power in Venezuela. And as is the case in many authoritarian states, the military and the government are closely intertwined. The military has been increasingly politicized, and the armed forces administer large portions of the economy, from energy to mining to the food supply. Maduro has ruthlessly made sure that only military members who support him and his government get promoted. Anyone else is severely punished. So it's no surprise that the Venezuelan military came out in support of Maduro's government. This was a setback for Guaidó's efforts to build legitimacy inside his own country. However, there are signs that the military's support for the Maduro regime might be weakening. Thousands of soldiers have either abandoned the armed forces or asked to be released from service. As one Venezuela expert said, the country will reach a tipping point when the military members themselves are suffering so much that even they can't feed their families. Juan Guaidó comes from the city of Vargas in a working-class neighborhood overlooking the Caribbean Sea. His father was a cab driver, and he has 5 siblings. Part of the reason why he has so much support is that, unlike many other prominent legislators, he did not come from a wealthy and highly educated family. In fact, he comes from exactly the kind of place that used to support Maduro and Hugo Chavez before him. Guaidó told the crowd of supporters that he is just like the millions of Venezuelans who knows what it's like to be hungry and to be desperate and unable to provide medicine for his family. I, for one, would be extremely happy if this were the end of Nicolas Maduro. I think it's too early to say that this will happen, but I was happy to see the European countries putting the pressure on Maduro. The situation there has been a disgrace for too long, but without an opposition leader, the rest of the world didn't have anyone to support down there. If you are interested in hearing more about this topic, we did an episode about the millions of refugees who have fled Venezuela and have gone to other countries like Brazil, Colombia, Ecuador, and Peru. That was episode 63, which you can find at plainenglish.com/63. Quick hellos to some listeners, real quick, since today's episode is already super long. Patrick from Belgium has been opening up a spare room in his home to guests from Airbnb, and he has hosted some travelers from the UK and the United States. And Patrick is using plain English to practice and connect with his guests. So if you find yourself in Flanders, make sure to look up Patrick on Airbnb. Finally today, big hello to Laura from Brazil, who is studying for the TOEFL exam and is planning to study in Canada someday. I hope you liked last Monday's episode about Toronto, Laura. All right, this is a great word today, to gain traction. What does it mean to gain traction? It means to have a little bit of success. You know how when you try to do something, but it just never really gets off to a good start, you never get that first little bit of success that you need to keep going. When that happens, you're having trouble gaining traction. What you heard earlier is that previous efforts to oppose Nicolas Maduro have had a hard time gaining traction, or a hard time getting traction. One reason for that is that the government has intimidated and repressed the opposition. Henrique Capriles, the former leader of the opposition, was prevented from running in the most recent election. Other opposition figures were either jailed or forced into exile. It's no wonder that the opposition to Maduro hasn't gotten much traction, since every time a leader emerges, that leader is disqualified or thrown in jail. For some reason, though, Guaido's efforts are starting to gain some traction. We'll see how far he goes. He has the benefit of support from foreign governments, so that may help give him momentum. There's this new thing in the United States called the Instant Pot. I'm not entirely sure what it is. Supposedly, it cooks whatever you want. It's like a pressure cooker, a crock pot, and an oven all in one. I won't be getting one. I'm just using it as an example of a product that has gained a lot of traction lately. I had never heard of the Instant Pot in my life until last week, and now I hear about it like twice a day. It has definitely gotten a lot of traction online. Everyone is talking about it. It got the support, that first bit of success that it needed to get popular. Can you think of a product that launched but did not gain much traction? Do you know what a Snuggie is? Google it if you've never heard of it. It's a blanket with sleeves, so you can wear it like an article of clothing. and it never got much traction after it came out, although it did enjoy a bit of a revival when people started buying them as jokes. Snuggie. It's something that never got much traction. Oh, here's a great example of a product that never got any traction. In the late 90s, or maybe it was the early 2000s, this guy announced that he had a product that would change the world. Literally, this would change everything we thought we knew about transportation. It would crush the car. Nobody would want cars after they saw this product. And he revealed his product on a television special. It was the Segway. Have you seen those? You stand on top of them and you lean forward or lean back, and that's how you move. After all the hype, everyone took one look at it and said, this can't be serious. The company thought they would sell 50,000 to 100,000 units in the first year. After 2 years, they had sold 6,000. A few years later, they had finally shipped about 25,000 units. Finally getting some traction, right? Well, they had to recall them all due to a software glitch that would cause the Segways to go backward when the user wanted to go forward. Right when they had started to get some traction, they all had to be recalled. And that might have been the last hope of the Segway ever really becoming a popular consumer product. 19 years later, the Segway exists, but the car is still unthreatened by any new type of invention. We started to gain some traction here at Plain English about 3 or 4 months into the podcast. Those early days, not too many listeners back at the very beginning. Crickets mostly, maybe some insomniacs, people who can't sleep. But after a few months, more and more people started discovering us, especially on Spotify, and we started to gain traction. And it's a good thing we stuck with it, JR and I, because now we have a flourishing community of listeners. And don't forget, as I mentioned before, as a member of the flourishing community, you have the opportunity to connect with us by WhatsApp. The number, once again, is +1 312 967 8757. Send me a WhatsApp, add me to your contacts, that's important, and I'll include you on some extra messages. Nothing special. I really don't know what I'll use WhatsApp for, but maybe just to get some episode ideas, ask for your feedback, maybe ask you some questions about the topics I'm exploring for the future. +1 312 967 8757. And by the way, this doesn't mean we're stopping the emails or anything like that. You can still sign up for those by going to plainenglish.com/mail, MAIL. So that's all for today. Next up on Monday, what should we do about artists who have let us down? R. Kelly, Kevin Spacey, Harvey Weinstein, comedian Louis C.K., actor Bill Cosby, all have fallen from grace as a result of personal misbehavior in recent years. But does that mean that we can't enjoy the music, movies, or TV shows that they've produced in the past? That's the topic we are going to be talking about on Monday, so tune in right here on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or wherever you listen. Thanks for being with us once again, and we'll be back together on Monday.